So last but not least, we're going to hear from Helen Wang. Helen, as you can see, was student number 21.
Oh, yeah.
And she used to be a research manager for security and privacy at Microsoft, but has recently moved to be CEO and co-founder of 6crickets.com. Look it up on the web. So her interests include web browser, mobile security and systems, network security in general, and has led a number of noteworthy projects for Microsoft, which I won't go through in the interest of time. So, Helen.
Thank you very much, David. Hello, everybody. Happy 60, Randy. Well, I have really thoroughly enjoyed this reunion. And believe it or not, when I first came to UC Berkeley as a first-year graduate student, I was so scared and timid. I didn't want to make a sound. But now, I mean, standing in front of all of you, you're more brilliant than ever, and I'm not afraid. I have come a long way. So thank you very much, Randy, for playing a big part in that. I think observing all the talks that I've heard today, as talking with many of the individuals, the panelists, and many people in the audience, I think the most fundamental trait I find a lot of us have inherited from Randy is the ability of seeing the big picture, is the being able to have courageous visions, right? Randy has done pioneering research in so many different areas, from database to architecture to wireless networking, large-scale distributed systems and big data analytics. And Randy is a courageous visionary. I think a lot of us pick up that trait and shared a lot of your visions today. And today I'd like to share with you about a couple of my visions that I'm very passionately pursuing. I have pursued and I'm actively pursuing. So this project, SOMAX project, which I call the activity platform, is the project I was working on at Microsoft Research, along with many people from many different research areas. So one of the pioneers, Donald Norman, in his book, The Invisible Computing, has said, applications, what a terrible term, what a terrible concept. We don't do word processing. People do activities. And software ought to support that. Back in 1998, he already had this tremendous foresight on the world that we have today. No matter whether you have an iPhone, a Windows Phone, everything what you have is the applications. But let me step back and think, talk about what I think, what he means, and what I think what activity really means. Activity is an ongoing effort towards a goal. An activity can be a project for research, for development testing product, and it can be an activity for event organization. It can be a trip. It can be a hobby like a book club. It can be a family activity like a Christmas shopping that you and your partner may be doing for your children. It's an effort that the user keeps returning across many different sessions. An activity may involve multiple people. So the mission of the SOMAX project at Microsoft Research was to digitize human activities. People actually, in terms of the activity, you walk into your office and you just send email for that project. I need to check on the code on this project, and so on. People already think in terms of activities, but not applications. Nevertheless, today we don't have direct software support for activities today, and people manage their activities manually using their head. Oh, I need to send an email for this project. I need to do this for the other activity. And in fact, this has incurred tremendous significant friction for people in interacting with the computing. For example, all these different applications actually have created information silos. This is my email. I work on a project called Browser Phone, and I use Outlook for the emails. I use some source code control. I use like a Google Drive and SharePoint kind of thing, and I use a local folder to keep track of it. We have various online drives, and there are a group of people, group identity management, and there's chat, and on and on. Okay, so these application silos multiplies people's effort in organizing and searching for their information. And what we really think the right abstraction should be the activity. And all these great applications, they're still very, very useful, but we need a higher level abstraction, computing abstraction, platform abstraction. So what the SOMAX project was about is activity-based unification and organization of digital artifacts. And here, we need a platform. It's not just, our solution needs to be a platform, should not be yet another silo. It's not yet another application. The activity should permeate through all aspects of the system. So here's what I imagine, whether this is a Windows shell or iOS shell, you can use your imagination. So here, these was my activities. I have the SOMAX project, I have a paper submission, I have another, product research, I have family, finance. This may tell me time to rebalance 401k, and, various activities in my life. Okay. And then if I dive into one of the activities, for example, the SOMAX project, it'll come back to the workspace that I used to be at. This is where I was at, and I was doing this paper, graph, and even LaTeX on Emacs. But then the notion of activity should not be just skin deep. It needs to go beyond that. So it needs to permeate through in the data. It's not just the user interface, not just the windows. Right? For example, when you're shopping with Amazon, 1 year Adam and I, we were shopping for our kids. We both bought this robot turtle toy. Well, if we have, Amazon knows that I'm doing Christmas shopping, and Adam is my activity partner for Christmas shopping, then could tell me that, hey, Christmas shopping, this activity, Adam already bought this present. Then I would not have bought a duplicate present. Okay. So then when when I was editing a paper with my co-author, I'm about to edit a paragraph that my co-author may have been just about to touch the next paragraph. You could tell me that Alex is editing this paragraph, then you should talk. So that's in another application. Yet in another example, if you do Google search or Bing search, you're searching for a topic. If you know that you're doing this research for whatever project, if you're part of this activity, let's call that whatever foster activity. And then when you're particularly making a search, and it can tell you that, oh, your project partner has done the same search, and here's the link that he or she followed, and here's the notes that he or she wrote. So the activity platform can be thought of as the next generation social platform and API. So today, Facebook is the platform to the application website. The Facebook tells the application, here are the friend circles. The application tells back to the Facebook, here are the behaviors in an application. Application tells about this person's behavior in the application, telling the Facebook about friends' behavior in the application. So analogously, the activity platform, basically offers information in addition to the friend circle, but the context of user activities. Okay, and it can be collected by all the applications and supplied to all the applications. Well, if you're a Randy student, you've got to have a slide looking like this. So we have this activity platform. It's supplying a user's activity to each application, and each application in turn contributes, rolling the snowball of a user's context. So let me illustrate it in terms of mechanism. What would be the mechanism to implement such activity? So let's say this user Jane, for all the data in the world for this user Jane, some of them is a private data only Jane can access. Some of them is a group accessible data because Jane is part of a group, and some of the data is, sorry about this is PowerPoint and Google. PowerPoint does not interoperate very well. And then there's the public data, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, and anywhere. And so these are all kinds of data that Jane can have access to. So what does it mean by applying activity concept into here? Is essentially we can implement that as an activity tag, right? So for example, this part of the private data or that part of the group accessible data or this part of public data can all be tagged as belonging to this activity called new product research. And some other parts of data can be tagged as whatever other project. So this is the mechanism. So ultimately, here we're introducing a very fundamental mechanism here is the concept of universal tag. Let me put it into another context. Many of you who use Gmail, who use Google Doc, okay, who use Chrome browser. Okay, I see a lot of overlapping people using these three applications. In each three of them, in Google Chrome, you have favorite folders. In Google Doc, you have folders or some other mechanisms. And in Gmail, you have labels, right? Oftentimes, your projects or activities are permeating through all these three silos. Here, we're saying we're calling for a universal labeling, universal tag. And this should not be application-specific. And this should be access control agnostic. It shouldn't govern or change the access control of any item by tagging an item belonging to activity. It doesn't mean that all the people involved in an activity can access it. In contrast, some other very familiar abstractions like Yammer group, Facebook group, or Slack channel. Slack is so so hot these days. And those are actually group abstraction, putting things into the channel, exposing that item to everybody involved in that channel. Okay, of course, there are some fundamental challenges for a vision like that. First of all, is the visual representation of activities, how to scale to many different applications and with different data types. And how can we minimize the user burden in doing the labeling, tagging, and so on. And how can we protect user privacy in this activity platform? For example, should an application's contribution be accessible to another application? So should Lowe's, the app knows that the user has purchased a John Deere lawnmower from Home Depot, for example. Should a user's contribution be accessed by another user's application? Can a user's TripIt application access the user friends liked cities, for example? So these, when we're rolling a snowball and cross-user, cross-application permissioning can become like how do we resolve that? So in terms of visual representation, I can show you we actually built this prototype at Microsoft. Here we have an activity browser. There's these different activities. Some of them you can have group-related activities. And here is, there are 57 news for that particular activities, and so on. Okay, and then if you click on one activity, it will show you these are the various tabs. Here, these are all the feeds, whether it's updates on the code, whether you get an email, and here, these are the to-do list, and here, this is, which one is this one? These are links and documents that's associated with this activity, and these are the events, the calendar events, and these are the people associated with the activities. So that's kind of one way that we're realizing. So for all kinds of applications, you can potentially map into these kind of 5 different kind of entity types. So to minimize the user burdens, we do a collaborative activity creation. So we're working on a project. Any one project member creating that activity, causing that activity created for all the project members. And we also do the collaborative activity tagging. If Randy sends me an email for that project, and then that email I receive also has the activity tag, so I don't need to tag it. There will future work about inferring activity, as well as better bootstrapping. How can we give high quality recommendations with very, very few labels? So we talked about the permission design. And so basically, when we're rolling these applications, different users into this big platform, how do we manage the permissions? So there are some big lessons we learned from Facebook. Facebook is not least privilege. Once you give an application to read your stream, no matter what you're going to post in that stream, that application will see. You're giving all of your future to that application. And it's not developer friendly. Out of 39 permissions, 36 of them require manual review, which can take up to 3 to 14 days. And it also sacrifices functionality for privacy. Sometimes certain things like capabilities like restream or friends sharing, they don't want people to use that, right? So our goal is to reduce the developer burden by minimizing the number of permissions. If there are no permissions at all, that would be the best. So no asking user. And if you have to have a permission, we want to reduce user burden by minimizing the number of prompts. And thirdly, we want to have list privilege, and we want to enable cross-user, cross-application sharing without violating these goals. So I'm just going to quickly touch upon our techniques. Our techniques actually have opaque handle. So when you give an application activity, you don't need to say, what's the activity? You can just give it a random number, opaque handle. And then the application can use that handle to string together all the behaviors for that activity, although the application doesn't know what that activity is. There's opaque display. So if you want to see Lowe's, what the Lowe's is trying to do with their user, you show a display, but no one can see it, right? So it's, the Home Depot cannot actually see the content, but only the user can see the display. This user has purchased this John Deere from Lowe's, for example, but Home Depot cannot see it. And lastly, there's a user-driven access control, and there's a piece of data the user wants to share. Upon user's action, the permission is granted without any prompts. So in our prototype design, we only needed just one permission. I only have 5 minutes, so so that's pretty much about the SOMAX project. I would conclude that it's time for better abstraction between people and computing. That's the activity. And the key mechanism is universal tagging. And we need to run computing around activity in each application, in the shell, in operating system, in our social and cloud platform API. And we need to require here, this requires interdisciplinary research across HCI, machine learning, information retrieval, system and security, etc. There are many challenges. I have 5 minutes. I do want to talk about my new endeavor that I'm very, very passionate about. So basically, this is a website that we aggregate children's activity, having a marketplace for the children's activity, and it's for parents to use our website as a planner, scheduling, and booking service. Right? Why do I do that? I'm a mom. These are my sons that Adam and I have. This is Doc. This is Dopey. Okay, so activity planning is very difficult for us parents. Who are the parents here? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, some of you may appreciate this. Okay, according to our own survey, more than 88% of the parents spend 2+ days planning for their children's summer camps. More than 64% of parents spending 4+ days planning for summer camps. In 2008, Amazon did a study. 100 millisecond delay in the user can cost us 1% sales. Here, we're talking about 6 orders of magnitude longer user delay. So I think what we're talking about here, what this reveals me is a great opportunity, an area. It's like, so we're bringing our technologies to the developing country, right? Actually, we have a space that's still in the 20th century. Okay, this space is enrichment education. Basically, parents cannot find activities, and yet the providers cannot find students. They have more than 80–90% of the providers have empty seats in their classroom. So where we add value is exactly a marketplace for providers to list their seats and for parents to have a central place to search, to plan scheduling, and to book activities. Okay? So this is a $15 billion industry. Well, the parents here know how much money we spend for our children and how much really we want to spend for our children. And 94% of the parents said scheduling is the key pain point. And so a biggest thing we did is we allowing the parents to do the scheduling. So in the interest of time, I would just say that we have had so basically this is almost like Airbnb for the children's activities. The providers can self-serve, and we take a commission from the providers when we only bring them the services. And for the parents, they can do the scheduling, and the marketing is not only bringing the convenience for the parents, but also the great marketing for the providers and the granularity of the programs. And we got a real big hit over the last summer in Seattle. Had a jockey stick on the number of signed-up users, and we had $2 million worth of inventory, even though we entered the market late for summer camp planning. We sold $20,000 worth of the inventory and had revenue. And parents really finally sent me emails saying, I really, really love your website, and discovered new opportunities, and so on. And providers, we onboarded like 60 providers over a couple months. If you go to our website, you can look at the press. I was in the news. In the ABC local news, you can see me 5-minute fame in that. I was in the radio news and some local newspapers. We are quickly expanding to many more markets. And we got a stellar team, particularly Adam Costello is my cornerstone. And why am I so passionate about this? Okay, I think enrichment education is where education innovation will break new ground with a lot of creativity without any constraints. And the regular schools, I think, have a lot of constraints in breaking new ground. And enrichment activity, people can arbitrarily express their creativity. And I hope in the future, Uber can make a Brazilian president drive for people. And we can make everybody to use the simplest words to teach children about their profession or anything they know. That would be the very, very long-term vision. That's all. Oh, about security on this part. There is a security on this part. Adam and I, we discovered in this process a really significant threat in the internet right now. I cannot tell you in public, but if you can come approach me, there is a really significant thread in the internet on a common design flaw in the authentication logic in many applications and websites. And more than 50% of the application website have this problem, according to a more in-depth study. And you can come and talk with me about that in detail. That's a side product. Great, that's all.
All right. Thank you very much. So we have time for a few questions.
I'm sorry to monopolize all the questions, but no one else is asking any, so I'm like...
Great, please ask.
I mean, the only thing I want to say is, as someone who spent more days than I'd like to think scheduling summer camps for my kids, if you could only have a single point of payment so that we didn't have to sign up for accounts on
That's what we have.
like 10 different sites, that alone will get me to use your system.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we do that, and on top of that, you also do scheduling, because scheduling is across different providers, right? And figuring out this goes to, so we do all that.
So I found your thing interesting with the commentary if somebody's doing something. But Doug Engelbart, that was one of his visions in the 60s, and 70s and 80s about being the hyperlink and having that community and being able to say. So that was kind of some of the pioneering work, and I'm really glad that you built upon that to kind of share that.
I'm sorry I didn't show the related work slide. I mean, there was a lot of work in the activity-based computing. I think what's really fundamental here is to recognizing that there needs to be a platform. I think we are definitely standing on the giant's shoulders. So I think that the right way to approach activity-based computing is to make that part of the platform.
Yeah, because they...
as well as the recognition of the universal tag.
In his later years, there was something that they tried to build like 10 years ago called Hyperscope.
Yeah.
That basically incorporated. You probably know, but it was just...
Yeah, and actually
nice
this dated back from Vannevar Bush in 1945.
Yeah, 45, yeah, with Memex and
yeah. Exactly.
Great.
Yeah. Actually, the name Somax come from it's a Memex, social Memex. Sorry, I should have given a better explanation.
So I'm actually curious about the future, given you're not at Microsoft, if you could say about the future research direction of that, because trying to design for human activity on top of the existing apps that are kind of not activity aware kind of will lead to a not really great support for activity. Like, it's good that you have a platform, but then we need apps at a higher level of human activity, because even I would claim some of the things like work on the SOMEX project is kind of a medium level activity, but the higher level activity it might be something about your research career or about your health or higher level human activity in the activity theory sense, from which I know Mary knows all about from the kind of Russian psychology. So I'm wondering, have people started to build higher level support for activity rather than just kind of this medium level between them?
That's a great question. If anybody can tell me how I can, the best way to live my life, achieving all these goals, and I would love that. I think there's many layers of semantics that we're talking about here, but without this primitive of universal tag, it will be. I think this is a very, very basic that we ought to have. I think some of those things that if people can collaboratively curate a great path for everybody to achieve what they want to do, I think that would be great.
All right. Thank you once more.